Marcus has
All
it.
right, now we're good.
Okay. All right. This is it. This is episode 13. Lucky 13. The Lingoholics. We're back in town. back at it. Another pod Sunday. Fun guest today. This is Ian here. Back in my classroom. It's kind of like I like recording here. Little football in the background. It's nice. Fun weekend. Was hanging out with Cody earlier. Marcus, we were chatting with you. And we got your buddy today. But yeah, man, it's been a fun language week. The Polyglot conference is happening. That's a 10-day online event this year. And me and Cody already watched a few talks yesterday, and it's super fun. But that's going to be for a future episode talking about that. And today, yeah, let's just go around the horn here. Let's go 100 kilometers out west. Cody, the new microphone. What's up, buddy? You're Canada represent today.
Yes, yeah, I finally got a new microphone here, and
Good.
I'm good. Yeah, we had a fun time out in Strathmore. We were with our friend Alejandro, and just had a good time out there Friday night. Then yesterday had a friend's birthday, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I think I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty well. Yeah. How about you guys?
Teaching, man. Yeah.
Well, so first of all, I literally just came back to Barcelona. I've been up in.
Did you just get back?
I just got back 15 minutes ago.
Nice.
I was up in Cerdanya, which is a region in the Pyrenees in northern Catalonia, right on the border to France, essentially.
Yeah. Nice.
So I've been up buscando bolets. Bolets is setas, so mushrooms. So yeah, hanging out with my Catalan tíos, mis tíos catalanes. Anyway, so yeah, it's been good, but I just got back, so yeah, that's fun. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our guests for today. So Mac.
Yes.
Hello.
It's good to see you again, man. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, but first of all, to give you some context, Mac and I met down in Costa Rica in 2018. I actually worked for you at your eco hostel. You run an eco hostel, or what would you call it?
Yeah, it's an eco retreat center. We're kind of moving away from the hostel vibe and moving more towards running retreats.
Right. So I've worked at your eco retreat center in Costa Rica for 3 weeks, I think. Yeah, 3 weeks.
Was that all? Oh man, I thought you were there for.
Or maybe it was 4 weeks. Maybe it was 4 weeks. I don't remember exactly. But I was down there, and the thing is, when I went down to Costa Rica, because I didn't speak Spanish back then.
That's right. I remember you.
And I
remember you learning. I remember you studying.
Exactly. So I was super stoked about learning and speaking Spanish. And you were the first person there from the United States or from the Western world that spoke Spanish well. So you were a huge inspiration to me when I just started, and you gave me some really good tips and some really good material.
Tips and tricks.
Yeah, those Pimsleur classes.
Yeah.
They're very, very helpful.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So I've been doing that for a bunch of other languages now, because I realized how useful they are. So I've been doing it in French. I've been doing it in French and Portuguese, and a little bit of Russian as well. Just dabbling, playing around.
Little dabble.
Yeah, cool.
Dabbling.
Yeah,
anyway, Mac,
I'm interested in hearing your adventures in language and
for sure.
See what you've learned. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to throw it over to you and let you introduce yourself, and tell us also about your language adventures and what languages you speak.
Sure thing. So Mac, I'm 40 years old. I was born and raised in Texas, and I wasn't terribly interested in languages growing up. I studied Spanish in school. Growing up in Texas, there was a big Hispanic influence, so we all took Spanish classes and stuff. But it never really stuck. I wasn't terribly interested until I got to college. My first year in university, I went traveling. I took a backpacking trip across Europe and met a girl from Montreal, a French-speaking girl from Montreal in Barcelona, actually. Totally fell head over heels in love with her in the first hour that I met her, It was a very short-lived, just a couple months kind of fling. I actually flew once we both got back home. We were young. I was 19. She was like 2 or 3 years younger than me at the time. I actually flew up to stay with her for like 2 weeks or so at her parents' house. Didn't speak a word of French, but I was so into her, and sort of that first backpacking trip in Europe sparked this interest for me in other cultures and languages and stuff. So I immediately enrolled in French classes, and I majored in French at university, and ended up studying, like spending 1 semester abroad in France, and just really kind of fell in love with it. And then again, like kind of lost interest in languages for a while, almost 10 years. And then when I was in my early 30s, one of my buddies showed me the Pimsleur classes, and I felt it like rekindled this passion for learning languages. And so I picked up all the French that I had lost really fast, and then went beyond my university level pretty quickly. And then from there, just, kind of how I went, oh man, this is so great. Spanish came way easier now after I already had French down. And then really those, I know you guys are doing the polyglot thing, and I really only speak 3 languages, so I don't know if I quite qualify as a polyglot.
Hey, that's good. That's kind of what I do.
Close enough. All right. And I've studied some Italian and some German, and it's pretty amazing. Once you have the first couple of languages down, then the others, especially if they're related languages, start coming pretty quickly. So with just a couple of months of study, I was able to communicate in Italian and German and stuff. And of course, have lost it now because it's been years since I've practiced.
This is something that Ian and I were actually talking about on Friday night, just like building that scaffolding.
Yeah,
I was talking about it. I was talking about that with you. So here's basically the thesis of that argument. So when you let's take the Romance languages, for example. So Mac, I'm currently right now dabbling in Catalan. I was just up with 3 Catalan dudes speaking mostly Castellano, but a little bit of Catalan as well. Because I told them that I'm excited about languages and that I want to try to learn Catalan. So obviously they listen to that, and they speak Catalan to me all the time. And then every once in a while we go over to Castellano because, I just started a month ago, so it's still hard for me to express myself. But it's fairly easy to understand Catalan because it's Romance language. Yeah. And as you know, if you already speak 1 or 2, it's really easy to pick up a 3rd.
Totally.
So my point, the argument that I was going to get to was that once you already have, because I feel like you already have the scaffolding in my brain, like the structure for Catalan, I kind of just have to fill in the gaps, right? It's like filling in the puzzle pieces. Like I don't have to learn the way the language works. I only really have to learn the small details, the peculiarities, and then just fill in the gaps for all the words. Yeah. Right? If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because it's so similar. It's so similar to Spanish.
Sense. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, on a similar note, when I started, so I got down French and Spanish first, and then I started studying Italian. And it was amazing to me that almost everything that I was learning in Italian, I could quickly relate to something in French or Spanish.
The reference, right?
There was a reference. Exactly. Yeah. Both from both structurally and just linguistically, like the words themselves. So yeah, I like your idea about the scaffolding.
Parlarle.
Yeah. Because I was making the argument to our friend AJ. Okay, like I was just like, Portuguese. I told him this is like Cody's talking about a little.
Yeah, because he's
like, no, I don't. Yeah, he's Spanish. He's like, no, I don't. I was like, yes, you do. Like, you just have to kind of look at it, look at the structures, but you see how verbs are conjugated. Like, so much overlap in the vocab. Pronunciation might be the biggest area where, like, if you are dabbling in these similar languages, where you got to like be like a little more careful so your conversation's not bleeding, your pronunciation's not bleeding over. Yep. But in terms of this scaffolding, right, man, you just use it like as a hacking tool to get into the next language. And what I've discovered too is like yeah, definitely within a language family, but then even say something like Ukrainian to learn, like the verb conjugations are like exactly like a Romance language with like the first person, second person, third person.
Okay.
So then it's got like crazy cases that it's something different. But that said, like even that Indo-European language family, that yeah. So I always say the scaffolding, knowing one language, like knowing Spanish before French or vice versa. It's just a cheat code and a good cheat code to get into all the other ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Speaking of cheat codes, at our place in Costa Rica right now, we have our manager is Brazilian, so she speaks Portuguese. And I can tell by the way, I've never actually met her in person because of COVID and stuff, but when we talk on the phone, I can kind of tell that she hasn't really even studied Spanish, but she speaks it and using like, she's often using Portuguese words and stuff, but she's just kind of like guessing, and we're able to communicate really well in Spanish. And it's kind of amazing. And her pronunciation is all kind of messed up and she's using the wrong words and stuff. But the structure, like you say, the scaffolding is so similar that we're able to communicate.
That's so funny. That's exactly what I do especially when I'm speaking French, because my French isn't as good as my other languages, but I like half the words I say, I swear, I'm just like guessing. And like a lot of the time I'm right. So it's like, it's a good strategy when you're learning a language that's like similar to one that you already know.
Yeah, that's awesome. In fact, Michel Thomas, so there's another program that I
really good.
From. Yeah, and he says, guess at nouns or guess at words, but never at structure. He says, and I really found that helpful. Once you get the structure down, then you can guess at words and you'll get feedback like, what is that? Okay, try again. You know?
Right. Yeah, you kind of use that intuition. Yeah.
For example, I have a good example of this. So in Catalan, all the adverbs. So for example, in Spanish, exactamente.
Yeah.
In Catalan, they cut off the ente and just say exactament. And that translates to basically every word. So you can say, instead of normalmente, you say normalmen. Exactament.
Completamente.
Completamente. Exactament. So I feel like that's a good example of that.
Yeah, amazing.
So, but Mac, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you got going on in Costa Rica right now and the different opportunities for learning languages that brings?
Yeah, you mean for me personal?
Because I know, because when I was down there with you, you were going back and forth between Spanish, French, English all the time.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we had our volunteer program has been, shot. It's dead because of COVID. So we don't have many more travelers coming to visit us these days. But we did have a pretty strong volunteer program where we'd have like 10 to 15 volunteers from around the world who were coming to live with us for around a month or so, like you did, Markus. And so most of them were like Western Europeans. So we got, like you said, lots of Spanish speakers. Of course, we're in Costa Rica, where the national language is Spanish. Lots of French-speaking people, which was a surprise to me. Lots of French Canadians. Costa Rica, for whatever reason, is a really popular destination for Quebecers. And so yeah, it was really great for me to get to practice and learn all of these languages that I was interested in. And kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to do this project in Costa Rica was for this very reason. Like I'd spent a lot of my, youth kind of traveling around the world and stuff like that. It's really expensive. I thought, why don't I kind of build a place where people come to me? And so I get the good, a lot of the good part about traveling, which is just meeting people from around the world and learning from them and sharing experiences. And so, yeah, just like you say, Markus, so you got people like, so half of my day or I'm dividing up my day between, English and French and Spanish and Italian for a little while. We had some Italians who were there that I got to, practice with. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Can I just jump in and make a side note here?
Sure.
So it's something funny that you mentioned that you met a lot of like French Canadians and did you meet a lot of like English speaking Canadians too?
Yeah, but I think more French Canadians than English speaking Canadians.
Oh, okay. That's like, so this is something that's amazed me, like just throughout my travel is like, I don't know why this is, but I've always met like such a disproportionate amount of Canadians whenever I go abroad. I don't understand why, because there's only
Yeah.
40 million of us. And like,
Yeah.
like for example, at the school I was teaching at in China, like at one point, almost half the teachers were from Canada. I was like, how is that a thing? Like,
Yeah. And it's tough to tell too, because I might not always know, like if I meet an English speaking Canadian, if I don't talk to them for very long and stuff, I won't know if they're Canadian or American, you know,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because the accent sometimes isn't enough to tell the difference. But but yeah, as far as I could tell, it seemed to be, again, a disproportionate amount of French Canadians would come to see us.
yeah, it's weird.
And in fact, just an hour south of us, there is like a whole French Canadian sort of expat community just about an hour from us. So that's pretty cool.
That's interesting. Another thing that's interesting is that you don't get a lot of Americans, do you? You mostly get Europeans, right?
Yeah, we get a lot of Americans, but we do get more Europeans than Americans.
Because that's something I did a couple other volunteering positions, and we only had Europeans at all the places.
Wow.
Essentially. So Europeans definitely get around more than North Americans in general.
Yeah.
I feel.
That's great.
I don't know why that is exactly.
Yeah.
Probably a combination of factors.
Yeah. But that works for me, because when I leave the States to go traveling, I don't really want to meet other Americans on my travels.
And then, so you said, Max, so it would be once a month then? So is there like a lot of turnover then with the volunteers that are coming?
Yeah.
So it'd be like always new people, new languages to like try out. And
so our minimum stay was usually 3 to 4 weeks. And then sometimes people would stay for longer, 2-3 months, sometimes long periods of time, almost a year, where they'd leave and come back and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a high rate of turnover.
Yeah. So yeah, just in terms of language opportunity.
So Mac, what happened after I left? Really, because it's been 2 years now, so I'm assuming there's been some progress. And then obviously we have COVID now. But what's like the update on Cascada?
Man, we have a couple of new cabinas since you left that are just beautiful. Kind of, I don't know if you remember the big bamboo grove that was just kind of like down the hill from the lodge. Yeah, so we built a couple cabinas there, so they're kind of amongst and overlooking these like giant bamboo clumps or groves. Those are beautiful. My mom is actually building a new kind of retreat house there, which has a beautiful hexagonal room with big like floor to ceiling windows overlooking the valley. It's gonna be amazing. We have had less success than I would like in terms of growing food. It's been really challenging because Alan, you remember our landscaper, is so busy doing landscaping that he can't really focus on growing food. And then since we have such a high rate of turnover with our volunteers, we never have somebody who can take that on as a project for long enough in order to really get our food production going. So
what are you trying to grow?
Well, we were just trying to do greenhouse stuff mostly. So fresh veggies for the kitchen. That's where we've been struggling the most. We have had lots of success actually with bananas and plantains. We have hundreds of pineapples growing now. And we planted a lot of tiquisque and camote, which are Costa Rican sweet potatoes.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of this stuff takes like years before the production really starts going, but we've got the beginnings of a good food production.
So maybe for those of us who haven't been there, what exactly is this retreat about?
And where exactly too in Costa Rica?
We are 25 minutes up into the mountains from Dominical. Dominical is like a tiny but kind of popular surf and beach town.
Pacific side.
On the South Pacific side, thanks. So we're 25 minutes up into the mountains from there. It's a very hilly, sort of mountainous property that we have, with a giant, like 180-foot waterfall there, or in meters, it's almost 60 meters high. Totally gorgeous. Some of it's primary forest, but most of it is secondary rainforest now. It was 30 something years ago, it was almost all pasture land. And then this guy, actually one American and two Canadians, bought the property and started reforesting it. And they like maintain these beautiful trails through the place. They wanted to build a retreat center, eventually never got around to it. So when we got the land, it was just like a forest property with like lovely landscaping and different plantations of various kinds of trees and some medicinal plants and stuff like that. So in the past, we've had it for almost 4 years. So we've just been, we had to put in a road, build all the structures. Like I say, it's an eco retreat center. So we're doing everything sort of from a permaculture mindset, really kind of natural building using a lot of bamboo and wood. Kind of starting with really simple structures with open air, with an open air feel to sort of to have that kind of immersed in the landscape feel, rather than, at a typical resort, you'll have the nature's out there and then you're insular here, like sort of separated from that. We wanted more of an immersive experience. And so we started out doing, like Markus said, we were kind of more like a hostel vibe. Yeah. And then as our accommodations started to get a little bit nicer, we started to have more like regular vacation rentals and started to do retreats, maybe right around the time that you left, Markus. And and so we just keep building more accommodating structures to host retreats for the future.
Yeah, like it's really cool. If you have like a yoga pad overlooking the valley, sort of, and like in the middle of the jungle, and it's really cool. So you can go there and work out or do yoga or whatever, right? And then there's also there's a trail network.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Has that been extended at all, or?
We have some new trails. Yeah.
Okay.
Our property isn't huge. It's 28 acres. So. But it's actually really mountainous, so it feels almost twice that big. So in hectares, that's like 11 hectares. So you can hike for hours just within our own property, but we're getting to the point where we're about to max out of space. We do have
But
trails.
There are trails that go off your property as well, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's a neighboring
to that mountain.
Yeah. One of the neighboring properties is also a reforestation project. Kind of the whole valley that we're in is very, a lot of it is ranch land. It was a lot of that forest had been cleared in the early mid 20th century for cattle raising, for like McDonald's and stuff. Like there was a big fast food hamburger boom, and so everybody started slashing their jungle and growing beef to feed the US. And in recent decades, a lot of that land is now being reforested. So the jungle's coming back and the animals are coming back as well. So, and we do have access to a neighbor's property, which is quite big, where we can go hike through some of his.
Right. Right. A bunch of monkeys.
Yeah, we do have a big troop of monkeys, like 30 white-faced monkeys.
Way.
That's so cool.
Yeah, the cara blanca.
Cara blancas, yeah.
The cara blanca.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Okay, so that reminds me, Markus, I actually have a question for you. So when you went here, was this when you had your big hike up that volcano? Because that was after this. Oh, okay. Because why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because that's something that's like that's really like, inspired. Because I want to go there now, because it sounds like you had like a very spiritually enlightening experience. Like that sounds like something that I would totally want to do. So why don't you,
Mac, have you hiked Chirripó?
I haven't done it yet. No.
Dude, it's an experience. Let me tell you, it's an experience. So the thing is, it's very well preserved. So if you want to hike it, first of all, it's obviously a national park and everything. So you have to apply to hike it, and there's only X amount of spots every day for hikers. So the thing is, if you do it during Mount Chirripó, it's the highest mountain between Guatemala and Colombia. So it's the tallest mountain in Costa Rica.
Right? It's a volcano?
And it's not a volcano.
Oh, okay.
It's part of the Cordillera I'm blanking on the name, but it's the Cordillera that goes through Central America.
Yeah.
So it's in the middle. It's in the middle of the country, essentially, right? And it's very well preserved, obviously, because Costa Rica, they care very much about the environment because they've realized that there's so much ecotourism to Costa Rica. That's such a big part of their economy. So obviously, they want to preserve their biodiversity and their environment. So you have to apply to go hike this mountain. Now, when you get to the top of the mountain, you'd like to have a view, right? And the thing about, if you know anything about the weather in Costa Rica, it's cloudy and rainy 6 months of the year or something like that. Maybe it's
what
more,
months were you there?
From July to December, it's super rainy and cloudy.
Okay.
Now I was there in September, which is the worst month. It's the worst month. But the good thing is that you can get a pass to go climb Chirripó because there's no tourism essentially, or the tourism is way down.
Downtime.
But if you want to get a pass, if you want to get a pass to go climb Chirripó during the summer season, so January through May, it's basically impossible. You have to book it like a year in advance. That's at least what I was told. So I was able to get a spot to climb a pass to climb Chirripó. And I remember it being pretty expensive too. It was probably around $100 total. $100, but and it's a 2-day thing. But the thing is, you don't want to get stuck in a thunderstorm, right? But the weather in Costa Rica allows you to hike and climb in the morning, right, Mac? That's correct, right? So it doesn't rain in the morning usually, and during the rain season, it only rains in the afternoon. So in the morning, you actually have a chance to get blue skies as well, but only in the very early hours of the day, right? So right after sunrise. So basically, this is what I did first, and it's a long hike as well. So I think it's 50 kilometers total, something like that. Sounds about right. So I hiked up the first day in the morning. I started super early, and then you have to hike up to a hut that's positioned maybe 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers from the peak. So I hiked up to the hut, and I was there at noon. It took me probably 7 hours just to do the initial hike. I was at the hut. I stayed at the hut, and then it obviously started to rain, and the weather got horrible after 1, 2, 3 p.m., something like that. So I just stayed in the hut for the rest of the day and just waited. And this is what you do. I got up at 2 a.m. the next day, right? And started hiking with a headlamp and everything. And it was perfect. So it was perfectly clear, not a single cloud in the sky. I could see the stars and everything. It was a full moon as well.
Nice.
Right. So everything was, I barely needed my headlamp.
Right.
Barely, because everything was illuminated. And I started hiking. It's only a 5 kilometer hike, right? And I got up to this peak, and this peak is so freaking cool. It's super pointy. So once you're at the top, you really feel like you're standing on like a pedestal on top of the world, overlooking the entire world. And I was super lucky because obviously there was no clouds or anything. It was the perfect setting. It was a full moon, and I got up there. And obviously, if you're looking, I was up there an hour before sunrise because before sunrise you can start seeing the sun coming up before you can actually see the sun, so you get this nice gradient of light that progressively grows, and then eventually the sun comes up. So I got up there, and
you're by yourself. You didn't go with a
and I'm
group?
by myself. No, I'm by myself.
Wow.
I'm by myself. And I'm the only person up there because everyone else is up there for the sunrise. But I was up there an hour before the sunrise.
Awesome.
And that's when you want to be there because you want to see that gradient, right? So I could see the gradient when I got up. So it was kind of weak when I got up there, but you could sort of see that the sun is about to start coming up, right? And simultaneously, I'm overlooking the Caribbean, right? The Caribbean Sea. And simultaneously, there's this fat lightning show going on over the Caribbean. So I'm basically seeing the sun come up, so like the nice red gradient with a lightning storm in the foreground, and then, or like in front of it, and then in front of that, I could see because it was a full moon, so everything was illuminated, so I could see the entire isthmus. That's a hard word to say, but I could see the entire isthmus of Central America, essentially. Curve its way down to Panama through Costa Rica. So I could see the entire Caribbean coast.
Because you're at the highest point, right?
I'm at the highest point.
Yeah,
if you turned around, you can see the entire Pacific coast as well. You can essentially see the entire country. And it's the only place where you can do that in Costa Rica. So it was a remarkable moment. I just remember sitting up there, and it was complete. There was no wind or anything. So it was completely peaceful as well. So I just remember sitting up there by myself for like an hour and being like, wow, this is the coolest moment of my life. It was absolutely sick. And then when the sun came up and it started, it shined on the mountain range as it like curved down to Panama. It just looked so cool as well. And then there's a nice sign up there that says Mount Chirripó. And there's like a little Costa Rican Pura Vida flag as well.
Pura Vida, man. Pura Vida.
But dude, that was a sick experience. So if you have the time to do that, go do it because it's totally worth it.
Man, that's amazing. You sold me on it.
Yeah. It's absolutely sick. Super worth it. Anyway, what were we talking about before that? We're talking about Cascada Elysiana.
Yeah.
So that's the name of the place, Cascada Elysiana, and that's named after the waterfall.
Well, yeah, the waterfall, as far as we could tell, didn't have a name, so we just came up with it. We just came up with that name, and the idea was it's the word Elysian in English, like Elysian Fields, the Greek heaven.
Yeah.
With an A at the end, so it's Elysian with an A, Elysiana in Spanish. So it's like Heavenly Falls or something like that would be a translation.
Right. And that's pretty close to the mountain as well. Because I remember so when you want to go to Chirripó, from your place, you have to first go to San Isidro.
Yep. We're kind of on the way from Dominical. Yeah. From Dominical to
San
Chirripó.
Isidro. Yeah, exactly. It's right on the way. So you go, it's basically a straight shot. You go to San Isidro, which is like the third biggest city in Costa Rica or something like that.
Yeah, maybe even the second. Second or third.
No, I think Cartago is the second. I think
that makes sense.
Cartago and San Isidro. And then from San Isidro, you take a bus up the mountain essentially to the trailhead.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. But Mac, I was going to ask you another question because you essentially live in Costa Rica, or you lived in Costa Rica permanently, right? More or less.
More or less, yeah. I'm still not a resident there. It's a bit complicated unless you have, enough dollar bills. Eventually I'll get there, but I'm still on a tourist visa. It's crazy. I mean, I'm a landowner and a business owner, and I'm on a tourist visa just like everybody else. So I get to go down there for 90 days, and then I have to cross the border to Panama, get my stamp, pay my taxes, and then come back for another 90 days. So
that is so Pura Vida.
I know.
Pura Vida.
It is. So yeah, that's the deal. Someday I would like to be a resident, so I don't have to deal with that anymore. But it'll probably be a number of years.
So how is it living in Costa Rica as a gringo in terms of the interactions with the locals?
It's
or whatever.
Los
dude,
Ticos. Los Ticos.
the Ticos are, the Ticos are, man, they're such awesome people. I love it. I imagine they're so much more accepting of us than we are in the United States of foreigners. And man, it's inspiring, heartwarming, and also kind of heartbreaking, that they're treating us, I think, so much better than we treat foreigners in the States. And I worry myself sometimes about taking advantage of that. So I'm a bit conflicted sometimes about being, the gringo coming down and like buying up land and building, a business and stuff. But without going into the politics and everything, I'll just stick with that. But in terms of just culturally, it's so great because the area that we're in doesn't have a whole lot of North Americans there. So, which is what I wanted. There are communities throughout Costa Rica where there are just, large pockets of white people, of English speaking North Americans. And we were wanting more of an integrated experience in Costa Rica. So we're in a valley that's mostly Ticos, which I love. And so we made some really, really good connections with people there, both in terms of friends and people that we're working with or working for us. Yeah, man, it's great. I love being there.
Yeah, it's way more authentic, your area, than, for example, Guanacaste.
Yeah.
So if you go to Guanacaste, you're not going to hear any Spanish. It's essentially a state.
Right.
It's like the 51st state.
Yeah, and up there it's all, you have resorts and, high-rise hotels and stuff out there. And in our area, it's very much like 20 years ago, there were no like paved roads there. There was no telephone there 20 years ago. So, I mean, this place is really just starting to develop. And there's not much of like a corporate infrastructure there at all. Like even when you go to San Isidro, the city there's hardly any international companies working there other than like cell phone companies and stuff like that. But it really is a place that hasn't yet been like engulfed by the whole international business world and totally taken over by gringos yet.
So when you say you want a more integrated experience, do you mean that like the retreat is really close to a local village, or there's like local people working there, or like, can you just go into a bit more detail on that?
Yeah. I was referring really to myself personally. I wanted to be in an area that wasn't like overrun by North Americans. And we are close to a teeny tiny village, like less than probably 100 people. That is, all Ticos. But I didn't want to be in an area where we were going to be running into English speakers all the time. And like, that would be by default, that would become my community. I wanted my community to be Ticos. So so that's what I meant. I wanted us to become more Tico rather than
vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do people down there think of like Guanacaste? Because I remember I talked to someone in your community about me going there, and I asked if they ever went there or not, and they said no, we never go up there.
I have never been, because everyone has told me that. Everyone who knows me just says like, it's not your kind of place. You won't like it. Don't go. And that is, like you say, that's where most of the tourism is. And it's just not my vibe. I wanted to go to Costa Rica for the jungle there. The first time I went there for a permaculture, actually the second time, but I went for a permaculture design course, this 2-week course up high in the mountains, deep into the jungle and stuff. And the first time I really stepped into this primary Costa Rican jungle, I was just kind of engulfed by this. I'm going to sound like really hippy dippy, but there was just this, I don't know, just this primal energy in that space. And I was like, whoa. And the thought that came to mind was like, I'm home somehow. Right. It just felt so good to step into this thing that I could just, my body could tell this is just a really old kind of space. And it just felt really, I don't know, really healing for me. I felt really connected to that. And so I was like, that's what I want to do. This is where I want to live.
Yeah,
so
that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I get that. I don't judge you for that.
So how long have you been there now?
Almost 4 years. We finally closed on the place January of 2017. So coming up on 4 years.
Wow. And did you speak Spanish before you went there?
I did some, not great, but I could communicate just fine by the time I went down there. I had spent, I'd been studying Spanish for about a year and spent 3 months in Spain in Cuenca. Do you know where?
No, where's
Cuenca
that?
is? It's like from Barcelona on your way to Madrid. I don't know if you'll go through Cuenca, but so if it's between Valencia and Madrid, right in the middle, high up in the mountains.
Huh. What brought you there?
I wanted to have an exchange or a teaching English experience there, so I could teach English, live with a family, learn some Spanish, So, yeah, funny thing. By the time I left there, I had a very kind of Madrileño accent, and so when I went to Costa Rica. And I got a lot of funny looks because all of these ticos are like, what the fuck is this gringo doing speaking with a Spanish accent,
El castellano, tío, el castellano, tío.
Yeah, exactly. Saying all these Spanish words, that they're like, what the hell is going on? Because they're used to gringos who like hardly speak Spanish at all, it's like a thick American accent. So anyway, I had to sort of adjust the way that I spoke just to not like turn people off.
That's funny. That's like the opposite of Marcus's experience.
I'm the complete opposite because we hang out with a lot of Mexicans usually, especially one Mexican.
Okay.
in Canada.
Okay.
In Canada. So I've adopted a Mexican demeanor every once in a while, and it's hard to it's hard for me to get rid. It's hard to me to throw it off. So I've gotten some funny remarks on that here.
Yeah, it is funny. The Spanish speaking world is so diverse, man. I
know.
I think Spanish is, more than English is really diverse too, especially in the UK. There are just so many different dialects and accents and vocabularies. But I think Spanish just really takes the cake.
Yeah,
but English isn't as fun. That's my argument. I feel like Spanish is more fun,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like different Spanishes, like we were just watching the first talk yesterday at the Polyglot conference. It was about the differences in Spanish and how like actually Caribbean Spanish is one there's actually not a ton of resources for, because people focus on like Mexican or like Spain Spanish, but it's like, there's this whole like swath of Spanish here that's like all the slangs and vocabs for like Caribbean Spanish, and then Central America is its own thing too, man. So that's super fun to like that. I agree with Marcus. Like it's so like just pick a country and you can just like dabble in their what do you call it, regionalismos and like their slang. So
in Costa Rica they call them dichos.
Those dichos, exactly.
Dichos.
They have, they basically have their own language almost, at least in terms of just, they just invent all kinds of crazy words. And oftentimes you can tell like that this is a totally invented word, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't sound Spanish somehow.
Is there like,
do you have an example of that?
Yeah, or an example?
Oh man, I shouldn't have said that.
I know like the Pura Vida and Tuanis.
That's a good one.
Tuanis.
Tuanis, Nicaragua.
Yeah, that's good.
Everything is Tuanis.
Yeah, those are perfect examples. Those don't sound like Tuanis doesn't sound like a Spanish word, and I have no idea where it came from, but they have so many of those.
And then also, so we've debated this before on the pod, but the pronunciation of Costa Rica.
They don't roll their R's. Yeah.
Oh, no, they don't. They don't. No, they have like the little gringo accent when they say Costa Rica.
Pura Vida.
Bienvenido a Costa Rica.
Oh man, you know what? I'm gonna have to go back to Costa Rica because I went to Costa Rica, but that was a long time ago. I was 19 years old, and I went with my family for a vacation.
Yeah.
And I I just started learning Spanish at that time. So maybe I didn't quite pick up on it, but I never noticed that. So I don't know. I'll have to go back and see it for myself.
I didn't notice it for years until somebody pointed it out to me. I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, yeah, listen, they don't roll their R's. And then I heard someone say like, un carro. And I was like, whoa. Don't roll their R's. It's crazy. But it doesn't sound as bad. Funny. Yeah. It doesn't sound as bad as I do when I don't roll the R. Somehow it sounds natural the way that they do it.
It sounds natural. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't pick up on it until 2 months in or something like that. Mm-hmm. Someone like pointed it out to me, like,
shit, dude, it might have been you who pointed it out to me. I don't know, as far as I know.
No, I don't know. I was at your place in the beginning of my stay.
Okay.
Before my Spanish sucked.
So Marcus, you were in Costa Rica before Colombia, then Marcus?
So Mac, let me give you some historical context here. So I after I was at your place, I went over to the East Coast. I went to Puerto Viejo,
mm-hmm.
and I basically did the same thing. I worked at a hostel there for a month or something.
Cool.
And first of all, so Costa Rica is cool as well because the East Coast and West Coast are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The West, the Pacific side is very tico, very pura vida,
mm-hmm.
very it's Latin American. It's called Latin American. The Caribbean side is like Rastafari.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
There's a big Black population and Caribbean culture.
Yeah.
As well.
Actually, this is something that was really interesting that Ian and I, the talk that you mentioned about Caribbean Spanish, is that a lot of people, when they think of that, they think of like Cuba and Dominican Republic, but it actually includes like every country that has a Caribbean coastline, and it has a lot more speakers and the culture is a lot bigger than you would think.
Right. But it's super touristy as well.
Uh-huh.
It's so where I was in Puerto Viejo, it's like a little surfing village on the Caribbean side, a bunch of tourists, but it's definitely a different group of people. It's way more relaxed, a lot cheaper, and not as like you don't see the big resorts at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there's basically a bunch of surfer hostels that exist there. So you get a bunch of younger people. There's a younger crowd for sure. But I was there and I realized after being there for a couple of weeks that I was practicing more German than Spanish.
Wow.
There's a lot of Germans in Central America. Yeah.
So basically, at one point, I was like, okay, I'm tired of white people and I'm tired of tourists and I'm tired of all this. I'm going to Colombia. If I want to learn Spanish, I need to go somewhere where people don't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Or German or anything else. So I booked a ticket essentially to Medellin, and I went there and I lived with a family. I did something similar to what you did, it sounds like, in Spain.
Cool.
So I lived in Medellin for a month, and that's when I really learned Spanish.
Awesome. That's great.
Right? So I'd say that the 5 or 6, I think I spent 6 weeks in Colombia. Those were intense. That's when I really accelerated.
Yeah. And you were in Medellin? You were in Medellin the whole time?
Yeah. No. So I was in Medellin for probably 3/4 of the time. And then after that, I took some time and just went through the countryside.
Cool.
I went to Cali and Bogota and a bunch of other San Agustin.
Yeah.
And the desert there, whatever it's called. I don't remember exactly, but I just went around the country and checked it out. But when I left Costa Rica, I could speak Spanish. Like I could communicate, I could understand. I mean, Colombia. Yeah, sorry. When I left Colombia and after that, I went back to Europe essentially, but I could speak and understand Spanish. So I'd say in those 6 weeks, I essentially went from not being able to communicate to being pseudo fluent.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. I did the same experience twice in Germany and Mexico, right? And I swear it's like getting in a language rocket and just blasting off. Like it's so crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing what you can learn when you have to. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So after that, after I left Colombia, I was like, this was so easy. It was so much easier learning Spanish than I thought.
Yeah.
And so much more fun learning Spanish than I thought that I was like, okay, first of all, I got to maintain this, keep
Uh-huh.
learning, and second of all, I got to do more. I got to learn more languages.
Was that your first Romance language?
That was my first Romance language. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And then from there, I'm really interested to hear about your Catalan experience so far. I'm totally interested in Catalan someday.
Okay. All right. So let's dive into Catalan. So first of all, after I did Spanish, I started doing French. So I did the Pimsleur class. I did all the Pimsleur classes, and then because we have a polyglot community in Calgary with meetings, weekly meetings where we go and talk to each other in all these different languages. So I started going to those in French, and I was able to become, again, semi-pseudo fluent in French as well. Very, very. Now I haven't done French in a while, and I have a funny story from this weekend as well.
Oh yeah. You group messaged us.
Yeah, I went to France this weekend, but cool. so I essentially I did French. I was able to have like a basic conversation, which I'm still able to have, but I just have to concentrate. To not throw in Spanish and Catalan words in there. That was a little bit of a shit show. But so now I'm here in Barcelona, right? So I'm doing an internship, I guess you can call it here, for 4 months. And obviously, me with my fascination with languages now, I have to learn Catalan to some extent, right? But so COVID threw another wrench into the machinery here. Because what I like to do when I go to places is to find these polyglot communities, right? And that's also a great way to get to know people as well. Yeah. But those are all canceled now.
Yeah.
So they don't exist. So what I do is, and also another thing, with learning Spanish, it's so easy to find resources like Pimsleur, or there's a million other resources, right, for Spanish, because it's so common. But in Catalan, that doesn't exist.
Okay. Right. A little more hunting, no?
You got to hunt more. Yeah. But what does exist, and what is working for me pretty well, is Duolingo. There's a Duolingo from Spanish to Catalan.
Yeah, there is,
man. Catalan from Spanish. And I was not a big fan of Duolingo for Spanish because there were so many other good resources. But for Catalan, it's actually pretty helpful.
Awesome.
It's pretty helpful.
Any other resources you found helpful for Catalan?
You got your tutor, don't you?
So I was going to go to that. Well, so what I do, no, not a lot of good ones, unfortunately, that I've found. So what I like to do, I'm very auditory. I'm very auditory. I love to listen to language. I need to listen to it. I can't just read it, because then I don't understand how it sounds.
That's important too.
Reading and writing, preferably at the same time. Reading and listening at the same time, preferably, because then I see how it's reading and listening at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because then I understand how it's pronounced, and I see how it's spelled as well, and it's much easier. And that doesn't really exist for Catalan. The best thing you can find is Easy Catalan on YouTube. Do you know what that is? Easy Languages. But there's not a lot of material.
Okay.
There are a few videos for it.
There are a few videos, but there's not a lot. Though. So I went through all of them in one weekend.
Right.
So I'm basically doing that over and over again, but it's not great. So what I like to do as well, which I've talked about before on the pod, is that I do a lot of writing. And that's the best part. So I try to write, and then I go and check myself with Google Translate, because Google Translate, it works relatively well, right? So I try to write, and then I go back and I correct it. I correct myself. So I do a lot of writing in Catalan, from Spanish to Catalan, translational stuff. So I'm learning Catalan from Spanish, right? Okay. So when I learned Spanish, I learned it from English. But obviously, when you're learning more Romance languages, it's easier to learn it from other Romance languages.
Right.
So
and linguistically, Catalan is very similar to French as well, right?
So that's what people say, and I think it's equal to French as Spanish.
Yeah. Like a hybrid almost. Weird.
It's some weird hybrid like everything else. Yeah. And it's also close to Italian as well.
Okay.
That's what people say. It's just another Roman. It's just another form of vulgar Latin, right?
Right. So they're all connected.
They're all connected. So what I do a lot, obviously, because I love practicing, like I have no I have no inhibition for talking to people. So I just walk around and talk to people. Like I go to the grocery store and I just start asking questions to the girl in the register or lo que sea. And also in the lab. So right now I work in a lab, and there's 3 other people. There's 2 people from here, and we essentially only speak Catalan or Spanish. We try to speak Catalan, and then if it doesn't work, we go over to Spanish. Right, and they're very helpful, and they love it when you come here and try to learn Catalan, because everyone comes here to learn Spanish.
Right.
But when I come here and I was like, and I tell them like, no quiero hablar español.
Yeah.
Catalan.
Catalan.
They get super excited.
Markus, can you touch on that? Remember we had a little voice exchange the other day on WhatsApp about that tweet. If you were to try to speak Catalan to an only Castellano speaker, like, have you had that encounter? Yeah, because there was that guy, that Alex Rawlings, big polyglot dude, who was like, they will look at you rudely if you speak Catalan to only a Spanish speaker. But I know you're in Barcelona, where it's...
So I don't know how familiar you guys are with Spanish politics, but it's a very complicated, political, touchy situation here. So there's a lot of tension between the Catalans and the people in the rest of Spain for the independence movement, essentially. So if you talk to, for example, let's take the border police, for example, and this is it. These are all anecdotes. But if you try if you land in Barcelona, you try to speak Catalan to the border police or the police, the federal police, the Guardia Civil at the airport, they're gonna get mad at you, right? So it's very touchy like that. So Spain, the central Castilla, they don't like that they speak Catalan here at all. So if you were to try to speak Catalan to one of them, they'd get pissed.
Right.
That's at least how I understand it.
Yeah.
But here they're very understanding, and everyone's perfectly bilingual. They're way more bilingual here than they are in Quebec, way more. Because they're essentially perfect in Castellano and in Catalan. Perfect. Because people in Quebec are not perfect in English.
Yeah, you have a lot of Quebecers who hardly speak any English, right?
Right, that too.
Out up north in the kind of in the boonies.
Like outside of Montreal. Yeah.
Yes, but everyone in Montreal speaks English. But they're not perfect.
Right.
No one speaks perfect English. But here, everyone speaks perfect Spanish and perfect Catalan. And they have no problem speaking Spanish with you. No problem. Actually, if you look touristy like me, they speak to you in Spanish automatically, in Castellano automatically. And sometimes I've done this a couple times as well, where I stop them and I tell them to speak to me in Catalan.
Wow. And I bet they perk up and
pumped.
And they get so happy as well. They get
great.
super happy.
Awesome.
So I mean, like they're very tolerant here in terms of that. Meanwhile, in other parts of Spain, they're not to Catalan. That's what I've heard, at least.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I dated a girl from Barcelona for a little while that I met at Cascada Iliciana in Costa Rica, and she tried to get me to learn just kind of on the spot, or at least to understand some Catalan. And it was really fun. She would start speaking to me in Catalan kind of slowly. And I was amazed at the interintelligibility between the two. I was able to understand, a lot of it from the context of what she was saying, but it was cool. And then I picked up on some of those I don't know what to call them, the standard changes that you were talking about from, facilmente to facilmen or whatever it is, dropping the endings. It's okay, so there is a structured way that this is different, just all of those same words will be similar in Italian and be similar in French and in English, even in the same kind of way. You're just changing the ending. And that's for thousands and thousands of words will follow those rules.
So much.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was just fun for me, who's not a native Spanish speaker, and she's speaking a totally different language, and still being able to pick up on the meaning of what she was saying a lot of times.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, it's fairly easy to understand, just like it's relatively easy to understand Portuguese. It's kind of the same. But there's some weird things, let me tell you. For example, the pronouns here are a nightmare. It's like they took in Catalan, it's like they took the way the pronouns work in French and the way pronouns work in Spanish, and they use them at the same time.
Whoa.
Can you drop them in Catalan like you can in Spanish?
Yes.
Pronoun? Okay, you can. Right. Okay.
You can, but I'm talking about indirect object pronouns and stuff that is what you know I'm talking about. You know, for example, in Spanish you can say quitárselo. You can sort of do that in Catalan too.
Okay.
But sometimes they put the pronoun at before the verb, and sometimes they put it after. I haven't really figured it out yet. I have to sit down and really think about it, because it's very complicated.
And that's possible also in Spanish too, right? Or are you talking about something different?
Yeah, no, it's sort of like Spanish, but then they do it. So if the verb starts with a vowel, then they cut out the pronoun and add an apostrophe. So Loma is the man, Loma. L apostrophe HOMME.
So that's French,
that's French as well. So they added the French system.
I think that's easier than what Ian and I are dealing with Korean right now. When you're talking about pronouns, then you say like, what?
Yeah, that's
because they just don't exist in Korean, and like that's something that I'm both really struggling with right now.
Cody, was it you that told me that it's only like Indo-European languages that have pronouns?
No, that's not.
Somebody told me that.
It's articles we were talking about.
I told you that.
Okay.
I told that only.
Or Markus told you that.
I heard on
you told us that.
Focus.
Sorry.
Yeah. Only Indo-European languages have articles, apparently.
Wow.
And
articles,
and definite articles.
Wow. Okay.
That's what I heard.
Man, you guys are learning Korean. Insane.
So Mac, this is how it works here. So I'm all about the Romance languages and Indo-European languages, right?
Yeah,
that's all I really care about. But the boys here, especially Cody speaks Mandarin, Korean, and now he's going for the perfect trifecta Japanese.
Oh my God!
Right?
Wow.
Not yet.
You will be though.
Yeah.
Ian speaks a little bit of everything.
Wow.
Dabble.
Man.
Dabble Nation represent.
So both of these guys are teachers. Cody teaches online, and Ian teaches. He's a high school teacher.
Yeah.
French and Spanish.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And Cody does a little bit of everything online.
Cool. That's
mostly
awesome.
English.
I think Japanese would probably be the only non-Indo-European language that I would be interested in.
Why is that? Why Japanese?
I just love the way that Japanese sounds, and I guess I'm more interested in the culture than pretty much any other Asian culture. But yeah, I'm almost exclusively interested in Romance languages, except for German.
Right.
I'm interested in, and German and Japanese, I guess, outside of Romance languages.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I will ever get around to learning any Japanese, but I do feel pretty confident that eventually I'll be at some point I'll commit to like becoming semi-fluent in Italian and German and maybe Portuguese or something like that.
So do you have any language plans to realize that?
So I just I'm applying for for the second year in a row, I'm applying for a master's program in France. So my plan is once I get to France, then I'll be like immersed in a European setting, European culture, and then I'll just sort of naturally be more motivated to turn my attention towards either German or Italian, something like that. But the past few years, I've been, just really focusing on building Cascade Lisiana. I'm also a radical honesty trainer now, which basically I just do workshops for people. So I'm focusing a lot of my energy on that. But at some point, I would like to be splitting my time between Europe and Cascade Lisiana in Costa Rica. And while I'm in Europe, I think I'll really shift my attention to picking up some new languages.
That's awesome.
Nice. That's kind of what I want to do too. So where are you applying to?
I didn't want to apply to any Parisian universities. I'm kind of like burnt out on the big city life at this point. I love being in small towns and rural environments. I love being in Costa Rica in the jungle, just away from everything. So I'm finding like the smallest town universities in France and applying to those programs there. And one of the ones that I liked the most was in Metz, which is like less than an hour from Germany. So there's there's already a lot of German people there. And so I'm kind of already fantasizing about, if I end up there, then, probably German is what I'll start learning. Or if I end up on the Ivory Coast, the what is it called in France? The
Côte d'Azur?
Côte d'Azur, yeah.
Like
that's it.
The French Riviera?
The French Riviera, yeah. So if I end up down there, then it might be Italian or something that I would.
To like Marseille.
Yeah, exactly.
Something, but that's a big city, so you don't want that. There's a place. What's it called? Perpignan. Yes, it's in France, but it's in North Catalonia, right? So they speak Catalan there.
Yeah.
It's right on the border to Spain.
Okay. All right.
It's like a small medieval place. I really want to go up there. I think I'm gonna rent a car and drive up there some weekend. Cool. But yeah, maybe that could be something.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, full immersion, man. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's where it's at. Otherwise, I just feel, some kind of disconnected, like if I'm in the States or if I'm in, Costa Rica or something like that, and learning like Italian or German, and there aren't any speakers of that around, then it just feels like, I'm less motivated to do it. When I could be focusing my energy on speaking Spanish with the Spanish people there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, Mac, just sort of you mentioned the States. I'm always curious because like here in my class, I got like the flags of all the Spanish-speaking countries and stuff. But the States I find fascinating because all like demographic projections, I think 2050 is one of the stats they put out right now, that the States will have the most Spanish speakers. So I'm just curious, even in Texas, like your state right now, like, is there just more and more ample opportunity to like be interacting with Hispanics and
totally
growing one's own like Spanish knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially so I've mostly lived in Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles, California in the past 20 years.
Right.
And so, and both of those cities have huge Hispanic communities.
Yeah.
So I have found more and more opportunities to do that. And really, I've only spoken Spanish for the past 5 years, maybe.
Okay, right.
But yeah, definitely, I find more and more opportunity. It's a bit delicate sometimes with being a white person speaking Spanish in the United States, because a lot of Hispanics, I've noticed, kind of take offense to that. Like if you try to speak Spanish with them. Yeah, right. Okay. It's like, oh, you just assume that I can't speak English, sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I totally get, because as a gringo living in Costa Rica, when Ticos try to speak English to me, I'm the same way. I get kind of offended.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
It's that language etiquette.
So annoying.
Yeah,
exactly. But the way to kind of, everybody's different. And so I'd usually try to preface with, oh, hey, can I practice my Spanish with you?
Yeah.
And then they'll either be like, oh, sure, great. Or they'll be like, no, and they'll just speak in English.
Right. Yeah, I just find it fascinating because each, like the states like Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, like our buddy AJ, close to Mexicali, like it's like its own country is almost like I teach so much about like Spanish speaking countries, but I'm always like trying to incorporate more and more about like the states, like Florida. You can talk so much about like Cuba and everything. So yeah, okay, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there used to be a huge French-speaking community in Louisiana, New Orleans, generations ago, but now it's almost completely lost at this point. So there are very few places in the United States where people speak French anymore. And the same with German-speaking communities. Generations ago, there used to be like big German speak. We have lots of like little pockets of communities where everything has German names and stuff, but all of that's been lost.
Yeah, there's actually a fun little fact about German in the United States. I think sometime in the 19th century, they were doing a vote on like what the official language of the United States should be, and it like just by a hair, English won over German.
Wow, I'd never heard that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that was even earlier, Kodo. I think that might have been like with Benjamin Franklin.
Maybe, yeah. But for some reason, it didn't end up penning it because the United States doesn't have an official language even to this day.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's
Wait,
cool.
it doesn't?
No, you didn't know that?
Not officially.
No, I had no idea.
Oh, there you go. You learned something new today.
But no, because I think the reason they were gonna because they just kicked out the English, right? It's like, why would we just speak why would we speak the language of the people we just like booted out? That's why. Yeah, that's why German was in contention.
Yeah,
but
that makes
interesting.
Sense. Oh, another kind of fun fact that I want to mention earlier. Speaking of the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica, going back to the cultural diversity there and everything.
Yeah.
And kind of speaking to the linguistic diversity in Costa Rica, there is a community of Mennonites who live in. So Mennonites would be like they're kind of like Amish.
Yeah.
And so you'll see them at the farmers markets selling their wares, and they make like really good, like butter and like dairy products and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think they've been there since like the 17th century or something like that. There's about 1,000 of them still living there in this really insular community.
Yeah.
They are the only extant community in the world that still uses the thou form of the English language.
Oh, they speak English.
They speak English, yeah.
Okay.
And they still say
with thou.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Our old usted, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or no, it's our old. You. You is usted, and thou is tu. Thou is
gotcha.
the familiar.
Right. The familiar. Right. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds very formal to our ears now because we don't.
Yeah. It's like Shakespearean, right?
Right,
yeah.
but it's actually the familiar. So if you look at Romeo and Juliet, they're talking in the familiar. Thou art. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Right. He's being familiar with her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that's funny because
super interesting. I have no idea.
Nicaragua has, because that's a country I know well. I've been a couple times, and they have, because on the East Coast, a Mennonite community as well. I forget, and then because they're kind of integrated with so the big indigenous group in Nicaragua is the Mosquito. I don't think there's any in Costa Rica, but like Honduras and Nicaragua, and they've kind of, I know that Mennonite community kind of integrated in certain town, like missionary like settlements initially. So yeah, because when I went to the East Coast of Nicaragua, where like Mosquito is the main language, Spanish is secondary. There was, you could like just the churches there. It was the old Mennonite churches there. So that makes sense that they made it down to Costa Rica there too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Also,
I think it's fascinating.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up Amish because I don't know how it is in the States, but here or even in the rest of Canada, but at least in Western Canada, when it comes to like religious colonies here, we actually don't even have Amish. We have either Mennonites or Hutterites.
Hutterites, who speak a German to this day.
Yeah, like this
in Canada. Here in Alberta, like my school division has a bunch of colony schools, and German's like the first language in lots of those.
And is it their own dialect of German?
Yeah. Right, for sure, it's a dialect now.
Yeah, I think I've come across that on the web somewhere. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you always think like, okay, there's like the main English language, but there's just these pockets.
Totally. Yep.
In so many spots.
Yep. And back to Costa Rica, there are like lots of indigenous tribes, that still speak like only their their tribal language, and there's only a few hundred people who speak that language. It's kind of, man, that's just got to be insane.
Most languages in the world are like that, right? It's kind of crazy.
Historically, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like 7,000 languages.
Oh yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, but so going back, Markus, you mentioned like the Rastafarian in Costa Rica.
Yeah,
I think that's a little.
I don't know if it's actually. I don't know if it's actually Rastafari. I don't
but it's an African population because like
Yeah,
Okay, because
Caribbean. A lot of people came from Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there's a really interesting group in Honduras, actually, in the north, the Garifuna, they're called, or they have a fascinating story. Like they were like shipwrecked off this one island, like initially like a slave population. Then they came over, like they landed on the northern coast of Honduras, and Garifuna is their language. Like one of those ones, yeah, impossible to find resources for. But yeah, I didn't know. And I know they kind of migrated down to Nicaragua too, but I didn't know if that would be the same in Costa Rica there. But
it's all about resources, man. Like it must be so hard to learn these small languages without having any resources.
Yeah. Like I said,
like
you gotta hunt. You gotta
Pimsleur
hunt.
is so useful.
It's
and
incredible.
Duolingo, even Duolingo is so useful.
Yeah.
I wonder. I used Duolingo years ago and wasn't terribly impressed with it. I wonder if they've stepped up their game a little bit, or if I just have high standards because Pimsleur.
You have high standards, probably. No, Duolingo is not. It's not. It's compared to Pimsleur, it's not great, but it is helpful.
Starter tool. It's a starter tool.
It is helpful, and just to learn simple stuff and get to kind of get to know the structure of the language, and it's really good too if you can also listen, because the pronunciation is pretty good. So that's an example of where you can read and listen at the same time, and even write. So you get everything, except speaking, I guess.
Yeah. Man,
so I don't know. I initially I shared your opinion when I learned Spanish. I thought it was a waste of time, essentially. But right now I'm finding it pretty valuable.
Cool. Yeah. If that's all you got, then I'm sure it's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. But if I'm really getting, because I'm so spoiled with Spanish and French because there's so many resources.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to learn a language when there's good material, right? Good resources. But with Catalan, it's just not the same. And I can just imagine with a smaller language as well, it must be essentially impossible.
Totally. Imagine like travelers and stuff going and meeting communities for the first time and then trying to figure out the language on their own with zero resources,
That's a dream, actually. I have
really
one day, because like a field linguist, you'd have to do like how do field linguists do it, right? They just go off, and then
it's gonna be a years long process to dissect that and spell it out.
Right. I'm just fascinated by the process. Like you just went and you like point to a rock, and like whatever they said, you repeat that, and then like point to something else, and just slowly accumulate. I think it would be just a fascinating experience. Like, no prior knowledge of the language, no resources, nothing. So that would be a full-on adventure, linguistic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Have you studied linguistics, Ian?
Not dabbling again. Like I had to take a few in my Spanish major in university. I think I took a Spanish linguistics, which, to be totally honest, I wasn't like absolutely psyched on. Like learning the international phonetic alphabet, and which would probably help actually to know that more. But I don't know. It's too scientific. Probably Markus might be something for you.
I'd probably like that.
Yeah. But it could help to know a little bit of like linguistics.
Yeah. Have any of you guys ever dabbled in like one of the invented languages like Esperanto or anything like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Of course. I love dabbling, man. And speaking of tying this to this Polyglot conferences, it's supposed to be happening in Cholula, Mexico. I was gonna take like some PD days and go down, and like I had a huge plan this year, but then 2020, right? Everyone's story. It's all online. And at these conferences, like in real life, you meet quite the characters all over the spectrum in terms of like what they're interested for languages. And this one in Montreal, actually, Langfest. So there was a few guys that spoke Klingon. They got the guy that invented Klingon to give a guest lecture. And have you watched Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not even a big Game of Thrones guys, but we met the guy, super cool. Hi Valerian, we met the guy that wrote Dothraki.
Oh,
He gave a talk, man.
Oh my God.
He gave a talk, and we're like, we got our picture with him and stuff, and like he was talking, going back to like articles. Is like he was debating, should you have articles in a language or cases? And like any of us that have learned like a Slavic language, like cases are like death to start. Like cases suck. Like I hate them. Kind of used to him, but he was like total anti-articles. He's like, nah, like take cases. You don't want to do articles. We had like a vote and stuff, but he was like, yeah, he's a linguist, and he like, yeah, Game of Thrones hired him to write Dothraki. And I only know one phrase to this day. It was hajas, which is like cheers or like day. So we were just all around once we were out partying and stuff with like me, a couple buddies that I want to have on the pod here. We'd just be like hajas.
Yeah.
That was like the rally call for the weekend. But,
Nice.
yeah, man, these invented languages, like why not? Like people are all into types of weird hobbies and stuff. Like right. And like Esperanto has its whole like historical, political like history and stuff, but
sure,
like, Valerian, Klingon, there's a bunch.
Lord of the Rings has got a bunch of languages.
Lord of the Rings, yeah.
Oh yeah. So, man. Well, it must be fun too when there's only like, there's 50 people in the world that can kind of speak this thing, and you're like, oh my God.
Right.
Yeah, Mac, the polyglot community is pretty sick.
Yeah, cool.
Like these conferences, I haven't been to one in person, but they seem to be really, really cool. I know Ian went to one too, right? You've been to two now?
Two in person, and
two in person.
This is the second one online. This 10-day one.
Okay. And how many people attended? It seems like this is like it's blowing
growing.
up.
It's really growing. So when I went 2017 to Bratislava, Slovakia, I want to say there's like 500 or so participants. And then I follow it even when I can't attend. I follow it closely because they put all the videos on YouTube, and it was like, I think the year after was like 600, and then the year after was 700. So it's growing, like because people just start talking to each other. Like they really just started. Like the first main one of these polyglot events was like 2013.
Wow.
So it's pretty young still, like in terms of like the conferences.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what the next decade is going to look like. I think it's going to really boom.
Yeah, awesome. And it's so much more accessible now because of the internet,
Yeah.
It's just been amazing. The resources, like we just keep saying, the resources that are available for so many languages now.
Yeah.
So it's not just like people with tons of money and connected to universities who can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, even the founder of Duolingo, he's Guatemalan, and his whole thing was like, I just want to make education accessible for cheap as possible.
Yeah.
Right. It's definitely what I was going to say. It's definitely easier to learn a language now than 50 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And it's just getting easier, I guess. Hopefully, if COVID ends.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Actually, there's Steve Kaufman. He has a talk. I haven't watched it yet at the Polyglot conference, and his talk is about basically learning today languages back in his day, because he was learning like the 60s and the 70s, like full bore. So yeah, like just totally technology's the game changer for sure.
Totally.
So
well, and we just keep singing the praises of Pimsleur, but that was created back in the 60s, man. It was
great. Yeah.
Incredible.
Totally.
The program that they were coming up with, and some of the defense programs too had like a similar like audio program. Of course, you need like a magnetoscope or whatever the hell to like listen to the tapes back in the day.
Right. So, yeah. Or another good one, you could tell it's old if you just search up Foreign Service Institute.
Yep.
And
FSI.
FSI, man, like you listen to the audio on those bad boys, and it's like, whoa, like this is like sounds like some old radio program.
Totally. But I spent so many hours with the FSI French program.
Okay.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, man.
Good.
Like I'm a diplomat now.
Right, exactly.
So
but goodies. It's sick. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully when COVID gets off or goes away, then I'm definitely gonna keep going to more of these conferences and meetups and polyglot gatherings and
cool.
whatever. It's just such a good tool because me, I'm always all over the globe, and it's such a great way to meet people in new places.
Dude, incredible.
Like for example, what I did this week, and I was up with a couple of my friends here in a mountain village, and I wouldn't have been able to connect with those guys if I didn't speak Spanish and didn't have that fascination for culture and Catalan and whatever. So it really opens up a lot of opportunities, social opportunities.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, man, you guys are inspiring me to like, you're renewing that language inspiration in me, because I haven't
I'm glad, man.
Yeah. I used to spend hours a day, studying, and lately I haven't been into it so much. So now I feel like invigorated.
And like what you said before, like a lot of people say, "Oh, I haven't studied Spanish in years. I probably can't speak any Spanish. I'm so rusty. It'll take forever to pick it up again." But that's not true, because it's still there. It's somewhere deep in your brain. It's hiding there under a little rock.
Absolutely.
Or something. I don't know. It's still in there, and you just have to spend a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, and it'll come back.
Totally. And once it does, then it feels so good that you're encouraged to do it again, or to keep it up.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But it's the motivation is it fluctuates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every once in a while, like right now, I'm on a peak, a motivational peak, right, where I'm just so stoked to be in a foreign environment.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going at it 24/7. So like I'm in the lab, I'm listening to a podcast or something.
Yeah.
Right. And then I come home and I'm taking these italki classes right now. Do you know what italki is?
I've heard of it, and I don't remember. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So that's what Cody does, is what Cody teaches on italki. But it's essentially a platform where people all over the world can offer their language tutoring services.
Okay.
So you can, and there's hundreds and probably thousands of teachers. You can just go through and find the teachers that you like, that work well with you, and it costs like $15 an hour
for a private lesson, or
for a private lesson. And it's so good, because when you pay someone to tutor you, essentially they take you very seriously. And every time you make an error or something, they stop you, and then they say, okay, there's another way of saying that, there's a better way of saying that, or you have to use the subjuntivo aquí, or something. You know what I mean? Like it's really good. It's really, really good. And it's a lot better than, because when you're with your friends, they're not going to stop you and tutor you in the language. That's not going to happen. But it's really good to have a language coach like this, and it's also so affordable as well. So you can afford to take a couple classes. Like I try to take 2 classes a week, one in Catalan and one in Castellano, and I mean that's $30.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like you say, that is so affordable. And like I used to do language exchange, we'd spend half an hour doing English, half an hour doing Spanish, for example, something like that. And that's great. But after a while, it's like, what? I really want to get like more. I want a more concentrated experience. I don't really want to teach the English bit.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the biggest problem with language exchanges.
That's been my experience with language exchanges for sure. And I've also been taking my own classes on iTalk. Like as a student, when you just have like that constant stream of information and constantly getting corrected, you're being told new things. Like it's a way different experience than like having a language exchange with just like some random person.
Cool.
So I can totally recommend it.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
So
it's great. So, all right, guys, we're pushing
how we doing, boys?
an hour and a half.
Nice.
How are we feeling?
Good time.
I think it's a good place to end it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I got it. It's
Pura Vida.
8:30 here in Barcelona. I got it.
Yeah, man.
It's getting late,
dude.
Late-ish.
Yeah, this has been a blast, guys.
Hey, it's been fun.
Thank you.
It's been fun, Mac. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's been
no worries. I knew you were going to be a great guest. Yeah, for sure. So
all right, thanks.
Yeah,
cool,
and
man.
any last words, boys?
No, man. Thanks for coming on episode 13, episode 14, talking about the Polyglot conference, and should we do the whole like subscribe to us, give us some ratings on Apple, any of the listeners? I think we're at that point. We got to start asking.
Yeah, do it, dude.
Yeah, rating, give some love, and I think we already got. I put an intro to us in the Polyglot conference, and this lady replied back. She's like, "Oh, I'm a big fan and stuff." And so
Cool.
yeah,
man. Do it.
Awesome.
Get
That's
it.
sick.
Got to do the shameless plugging.
Shameless plug. So,
Awesome.
cool.
All right, guys.
All right, man. Pura
Peace
Vida.
out. Pura Vida.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Thanks, man.
Pura Vida.